Hey, I'm Jonathan Wild, and we are going to cover how to use the percent of receivables method. Now, the percent of receivables method is one of the ways to estimate bad debts expense under the allowance method. And to use this method, we essentially assume that a certain percent of accounts receivable for the period are uncollectible. Also, when using the percent of receivables method, we are calculating the balance we want to have in our allowance for doubtful accounts after the adjusting entry. If you remember, the allowance for doubtful accounts is a contra asset account, meaning it has a normal credit balance. Also, it reduces the accounts receivable account on the balance sheet. This can be a little bit confusing, so let me show you what I mean with an example. So assume we have $100,000 of accounts receivable on December 31st. And using analytics, we estimate 4% of our receivables to be uncollectible. 100,000 multiplied by 4% is 4,000. This means that after we make our adjusting entry, we want the allowance for doubtful accounts to have a 4,000 credit balance. Now in our example, let's say we started the prior year with a credit balance of 3,800. During this past year, we had write-offs of 3,000, 500, and 200. If you remember, write-offs occur when we determine an account is uncollectible. Under the allowance method, we debit and reduce the allowance for doubtful accounts for those write-offs. This gets us an unadjusted credit balance of 100. Now, like we just calculated, we want to have a $4,000 credit balance in the allowance for doubtful accounts at the end of this year. So, to get from a credit balance of 100 to a credit balance of 4,000, what do? Well, we record an adjusting entry that adds 3,900 to our credit balance in our allowance for doubtful accounts. Now, to record this adjusting entry of 3,900, we debit bad debts expense for 3,900 and credit allowance for doubtful accounts for 3,900. The debit to bad debts expense increases that expense, and the credit to the allowance increases the allowance for doubtful accounts.